Hi, today I'm going to talk about what scales and keys are on a piano. So a scale is a group of notes upon which a song's melody and harmonies are built. And that would also include the scale's chords and bass notes. Usually a scale is 7 notes, and there are many different kinds of scales. Just as a quick example, major, minor, chromatic, blues, woohoo, and whole tone. Here are different ways to think about a scale, and I'll be using the example of a major scale. First one is notes on a staff. So in this graphic you can see a picture of circular symbols on a 5-line staff, and each of those represents a specific note or location on your instrument. For example, this is your middle C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So with notes on a staff, this symbology represents middle C on the piano, and each subsequent note is a step up. Another way to look at the scale is by using note names. In this example, you can see the first 7 letters of the alphabet are used to name the white keys on the piano. For example, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Then that's looking at it with note names rather than notes on a staff. Another way to look at it is by note numbers. So you could play a key and be thinking note number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And these numbers would apply to any interval in any of the 12 scales, making it easy to transpose a song. Whereas looking at the scale from a note name or a notes on the staff point of view is absolute. That note is always a C, a middle C. This note is always a D. This note is always the E. This note is always the F, and so on. Same here. Each letter name is always its specific note. When you're looking at a scale from the point of view of numbers, it's relative to wherever your starting point is, so it's movable, as is looking at a scale from the solfegge point of view, which is do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. That's also movable depending on what your starting note is. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So looking at a scale from the point of view of the solfegge scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, or numbers, is movable. You can use any starting point and have the 7 notes of a scale be relative to wherever you're starting, whereas notation and note names are always absolute. Another way to build a scale is to use a scale formula, and that means on any instrument building a scale based on the distance between one note and the next. In this example, you would see a whole step between the C and the D, because there's an unused black note in between it, and that's called a whole step. And there's another whole step between the D and the E, and a half step, meaning there's no key in between the E and F, and whole steps between the next 3 notes, because they each had an unused note in between, and then a half step between note number 7 and 8, or the B and C. So that is a formula for creating a scale based on the distance between notes, whether they are whole steps or half steps. Another way to think about it is to build a major scale using the formula. You would have a starting note and then have whole steps everywhere except for between notes number 3 and 4 and 7 and 8. Another way to represent how to play the C scale is guitar tablature. Sometimes that includes the piano notation that we talked about earlier, sometimes the note names, but the main part of guitar tablature is a picture of the 6 strings, with the lowest string being on the bottom and the highest sounding string on top, and then it includes numbers that represent which fret of the guitar to press to play that scale. In this example, 3, 0, 2, 3, 0, 2, 0, 1. And then backwards it would be the C scale on guitar. Mandolin tablature is another way to represent how to play the C scale. In this example, your C scale is built on these 4 strings, which are pictures of the strings of the mandolin or the violin, and then you would play frets 5, 0, 2, 3, 5, 0, 2, 3, and so on. Mandolin C scale. In summary, here's how you create a major scale using the major scale formula. The first step of your scale is called the root. It's also the name of the scale itself that you build on that note, and it's also the name of the key that your song is built upon. And by the way, playing in the key of means you're using a group of 7 notes. I call them a note neighborhood, and you're building your melody upon that and your chords. But back to the major scale formula. So choose your starting note. In this case, it's going to be a C, and that's called your root of the scale. Then you go a whole step up, meaning you skip a black key, and that is your second note of the scale, called D in this case. Go another whole step, which means you've skipped a black key, and that brings you to E, which is the third note of your scale. Go up a half step from E to F, and that gives you your fourth note of the scale. Your next 3 notes of the scale are going to be whole steps. F to G, skipping the black note, to A, skipping the black note, to B, skipping the black note, and then your last interval, meaning distance between notes, is a half step from B to C. So the formula for making a major scale is the name of your note, 1, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. I like to think of it numerically. 1, 2, 3, half step between 3 and 4, 5, 6, 7, those are all whole steps, and half step between 7 and 8. So you can think of it as a scale is made out of a note and all whole steps except for between 3 and 4 and 7 and 8. On a fretted instrument such as a guitar, violin, bass, mandolin, or cello, a half step is the next fret up or down, and a whole step is 2 frets away. So pick a starting note. You'll be able to create any kind of major scale that you would like. Whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. It's pretty fun. Here's a bonus scale for you. It's called the whole tone scale. You pick a starting note, for example C, and build a scale using all whole steps, meaning there's an unused note between every interval in the scale. So if you play those one at a time, it sounds like a space age scale, and if you speed it up, it's really fun. So try that whole tone scale just for fun.